Chapter 19. Upon first glance, none would suspect Galmore Jungle guilty of the violence legends had attributed to it. The thick leaves filtered the heated rays above, lending a softening green light to the forest air, and the plants seemed to reach out to the delicate living limbs, curious and eager to experience the strangers who so raptly experienced them. The silence of the atmosphere soon felt holy in nature, the jungle no longer a dense gathering of greenery that housed inhuman warriors, but rather a lush cathedral erected to honor the primordial beauty of the world and its wonders. Moist ferns carpeted the ground in closely clumped patches, and thick roots broke through the soil like great sea beasts surfacing amid waves. Though rays of light did pierce numerous spots in the distance, at times it appeared as though the sun had fallen, for the vibrant green canopy above them gathered such a mass of branches, leaves, and occasional avian dwellings as to block their view of the sky entirely. No paths could be seen, though Fran walked with confidence along a well-memorized, if visibly imperceptible, trail that so far proved quite safe. However, a bit more than a half hour of this wore on her, and she paused for a moment amid a cluster of thin saplings to flex her ears with due strain and carefully observe the area. "I can't hear her," she said softly, a saddening look of confusion overshadowing her face. Vaughn looked at her uncertainly. "What do you mean?" It's all right," she replied, continuing on. "I know the way." The others looked to Bolthier for some explanation, but he simply shrugged and followed after her. Indeed, even he had never heard such a waver in Fran's voice. The youngsters stuck close, knowing the dangers of the jungle, but the creeping vines and fluttering orchids tempted them, and the verdant trees that grew at times several meters in thickness at their trunks seemed to bid climbing through the humid silence. The rumors that surrounded this jungle served as a powerful deterrent, but all hoped that having a Viera guide would exempt them from the traditional treatment of trespassing humans. Still, the threat lingered, and Penelo, her fingers beginning to tremble as the monotonous silence trudged on, at last spoke, if only to hear something familiar amid the strangeness that engulfed her. "Isn't this your home, Fran?" she asked skittishly, eyeing the fern-laden horizon. "Yes," Fran answered, not bothering to look at her. "Looks kinda lonely," Vaughn noted. "So does the Sand Sea," Fran replied. "There are cities out here," he pressed. She still kept her eyes focused forward. "Yes." "Come on," he goaded. "Tell us about it. You need to talk more. I've found that it's quite difficult to think while talking." Bolthier and Monty cracked smiles at this, but managed to contain their laughter. Penelo giggled. But Fran led them over a fallen tree, then, and there manifested before them a translucent wall of light, not much different from the mighty mist illusion that disguised Rythwal's tomb. However, this device seemed to have the opposite effect, for it only revealed itself when approached, and could not be penetrated. Fran touched it daintily, a look of both suspicion and expectation on her face, then let her hand fall back to her side and stared at the glimmering shield for a moment in silence. "What is it?" Vaughn asked her hesitantly. "The jungle denies us our passage," she answered. Ash gazed at her worriedly. "What have we done?" "We," Fran replied. "Nothing." "What?" Vaughn asked. He received no answer, however, for Fran had already turned and begun to walk back the way they came. This seemed at first worrisome, but soon she turned again, rounding a large tree trunk and stepping into the brush. Bolthir followed her closely, questioning her in Vieren.
Making an appearance? I am. I thought you'd left for good.
The others kept their distance, but watched with intrigue as another wall of shimmering energy appeared, sealing off Fran's apparent secondary path.
Our choices are few,
she went on, still in Vieren.
This is as much for you as it is for me. Oh?
Bolthir asked haughtily as she laid a hand on the force field.
You are ill at ease. Can you blame me?
Suddenly, she withdrew her hand and turned to face him directly.
Collateral?
She asked. He drew in an uncertain breath, but didn't recoil.
More than the Nethysite troubles you,
Fran said plainly.
You've let your eyes betray your heart.
All of the sudden Ash stepped in.
Is there any particular reason we are unwelcome in your conversation?
Both pirates regarded her a bit cockily, and then Fran faced the magical shield once more and began tracing mystical glyphs on it with her fingers.
We must go to Erud to seek permission,
she explained in the language of humans.
It is not far, but we may still be denied access to the mountain.
Erud? Asked Bosch.
Where you're from?
Yes, said Fran.
My sister is priestess. So she'll listen to us?
Asked Vaughn. She completed the series of symbols and flattened her palm against the glowing surface, and all at once it evaporated, clearing their way through the jungle.
Maybe, she continued. Humans are unwelcome in the village, as am I. If she turns us away, we mustn't protest.
Monty glanced up at Fran concernedly.
You don't want to do this. It isn't about what I want,
she said with sullen resolve, once again taking stride through the brush. Mist grew more common as their trek progressed, the very air swirling with glyphs and reflections, whispers of thought in its most basic form. Within 10 minutes they came upon a large gate built around the trees, sectioning off a gathering of earthen dwellings separated by well-groomed paths. The gate stood open and seemingly welcoming, but Francesca halted several yards from it, eyeing the 2 armed guards that stood at its posts, who eyed her and the humans in return.
Why are we stopping?
Vaughn asked.
It is holy ground,
Fran explained.
You mustn't go past the gate, understand? They will kill you.
Everyone nodded, Monty and Penelo stepping closer together, and Fran continued.
Wait here.
With this, she strode forward, addressing the guards in Vieren. They did not appear to meet her graciously, but did not attack her, either, leaving the humans relieved, but confused.
What are they saying?
Bosch asked Bolthir.
I don't know,
he replied.
They're going too fast. Something about us. They don't like us, I got that much. Perfect,
Vaughn groaned.
All right,
Bolthir went on.
They're getting someone. I think we're good. You think?
Asked Ash.
You want to go ask them?
He shot back. She rolled her eyes with a sigh. Fran then turned to the group and beckoned them forward with a nod, but as they approached the guards left, heading farther into the village and ultimately disappearing behind the grassy, fern-covered knolls that rolled amid the trees.
They go to find Yode,
Fran explained.
She can clear the path for us. You can't go in, either.
Penelo asked.
I have no reason to, she answered.
3 young Viera children, all female, scampered past the gate, the youngest stopping briefly to glance at the humans, perking her ears and crinkling her nose curiously before being dragged out of sight by one of the others. The gate guards, too, had been female, and Vaughn and Penelo both took notice of this, but could think of no polite way to question it. No other Viera could be seen from the gate, though their homes appeared quite serene and befitting of rabbits, and the lovely lilies and orchids that grew about the area provided a calming fragrance that lulled the suspicion of the jungle.
It's beautiful,
Ash observed. Fran blinked in reply, staring silently into the distance.
Perhaps the world would be better off without humans,
Bosch added.
Boring,
said Bolthier,
but better off.
The 2 gate guards returned then, their long legs stretching gracefully through the grasses and their sheathed swords swaying with their steps, but with them came a 3rd Viera, this one unarmed and dressed in more elegant but less practical attire. Some unnameable quality in her state of being signified her authority over the village, and yet she did not appear to acknowledge this authority, instead moving amid the wood as any other creature native to its depths, regarding it as another living entity, rather than a mere place. Her countenance, however, contrasted with the pervading serenity of Irut, a dour, displeased expression of suspicion overcoming her fair features, aimed at Fran with patronizing scrutiny.
You must leave at once,
she said in Vieran.
It is not allowed for humans to walk on these grounds. They mean the wood no harm,
Fran defended, also in Vieran.
I can keep them in line. The rules are not made without reason,
Yode insisted.
You've told me this,
Fran argued.
Must you hear it again?
She shot back. The humans shifted uneasily, none daring to look to Bolthier for a translation, and none needing one, thanks to the tone of the conversation. Viera were beautiful beings, each a representation of the perfect human form, enhanced with the exoticness of the jungle, their smooth chocolate-hued skin, dark jewel-like eyes, and shimmering white hair, as well as their ears and tails, peculiar, but nevertheless attractive. But this exceptional beauty masked the ferocity with which they greeted outsiders, and the humans, all aware of the rumors that surrounded the race, could not be eased by such heavenly visions. The guards kept their distance, maintaining watch over Yode, ever ready to draw their swords on the trespassers, and the 3 children who had spotted the humans earlier hid in the brush, their ears peeking over the foliage occasionally, but it soon became evident that other eyes watched them as well. A rustle amongst some ferns, a shimmer of light in the leaves above, and once in a while a flicking ear, visible but briefly in the distance, the Viera hid themselves well, but their curiosity got the better of them. It occurred to the humans that Fran had likely been aware of this, perhaps throughout their entire journey through the jungle, but if she did not mention it, all knew that it was likely meant to go without mention.
We seek passage to the mountain,
she continued, still in Vieran, but Yode remained firm in her resolve.
Use your unholy airships,
she sneered, delicately folding her arms.
We would if we could,
said Fran.
Yode, you know I would not come here if it was not important. It must be very important indeed, for you to bring your war-hungry humans along.
She shook her head, her tall ears swaying gently.
They are not war-hungry, they seek peace. Peace?
Yode scoffed.
They are leaders of human countries,
Fran explained.
A meeting is to be held before the Grand Kiltias to settle their arguments. Why should I believe such things?
Yode groaned. Vaughn leaned over to Bolthier.
Where are all the men?
He whispered.
They don't need them,
the pirate answered quietly.
Then how do they, ow?
Bolthier promptly elbowed him in the ribs. Yode took notice of this, glaring at them starkly, but then returned her gaze to Fran and spoke with smooth-toned discontentment.
The wood tells us about these humans. Can you not hear her?
Fran turned her eyes downward forlornly, and Yode continued,
Your ears are dull from listening their harsh speech. Viera who have abandoned the wood are Viera no longer.
Bolthier folded his arms irritably.
So you abandon them in turn?
Yode raised an eyebrow, obviously not expecting any of the humans to understand Vieran, but then seemed to grudgingly accept it, and thus continued in the human language,
We must live always with the wood. So is the green word, and so is our law. The humans do not intend to break your laws,
Fran insisted, speaking also in the human language, for the benefit of her colleagues.
Why should we forsake them? Why not live together? So you asked me 50 years ago,
Yode replied.
The wood has told us how deeply you care for these humans. What will you do when they are gone? You know you will outlive them. The wood is eternal and unchanging, she shelters us from such heartache. It will be worth the time I have spent with them, the lessons I have learned from them. Nothing can be learned from lesser beings. Fran.
Yode turned at the shout, and the others scanned the thick wood for its origin, finding a younger Viera, no older than Von Orpinello, bounding toward them joyfully. Fran smiled at the sight, catching her human companions off guard, and called out to her.
Muren.
They met with a tight embrace, exchanging quick, joyous words of Vieran that managed to goad a slight smile from Yode, though Muren seemed momentarily taken off guard by the humans. Fran assured her in Vieran that they meant no harm, but this did little to comfort her, for as she studied the situation, the guards at the gate, the morbid countenances of all present, she stepped back and somberly met Fran's eyes, asking what was wrong.
I am not staying,
Fran explained slowly in the human's language. Muren gave her a questioning gaze, still holding her hands tightly.
Why not?
A faint glint of remorse shone in Fran's eyes, then, and even in the absence of words or expressions, Muren saw what she hoped to hide and turned to Yode. She, in turn, glanced downward in a silent admission of guilt.
Yode,
Muren said, more a reprimand than a question.
It is the wood who creates the laws,
Yode answered steadily.
I merely enforce them. But our sister is back,
Muren cried.
Why should the wood not rejoice? That is above our reasoning,
said Yode.
We are born of the wood.
She pressed.
We hear her always, one with her will. We should share the same reasoning. MJRN,
Fran injected,
the wood does not stretch on forever. Beyond the trees, there is nothing to hear. She is only a piece of Evilise. Then why does she reject other pieces?
Muren snapped back. Fran then appeared to reach the breaking point of her uneasiness, glancing from the corner of her eye at the bewildered humans behind her, and reverted back to Vieran. Muren met her words with still more fervor, bringing an expression of defeat to Fran's face, and Yode, interrupting also in their language, took up the argument, receiving another of Muren's answerless questions.
Muren, she replied firmly, know your place.
Muren scowled, but said nothing, and Yode continued on to Fran and the others in the human tongue,
your presence here is blasphemy. You must go back the way you came and never return. That cannot be all.
Mirren begged.
Evelise is changing. How can the Viera stay and do nothing? Evelise is for the humans,
Yode told her.
The wood alone is for us. You would have us just hide here in the trees?
Mirren insisted.
What if I go with Fran? Will you forsake me, too? I will not take you,
Fran injected, gleaning a shocked, feminine gasp from her little sister.
You must remain away from the humans.
She went on more gently.
Live together with the wood. This is your way.
Mirren's eyes grew round, glistening at the rims, clearly wearing on Fran, but seeming to strike a chord of regret in Yode as well. The young Viera stepped forward disbelievingly, fists clenched and voice desperate.
But Fran... You mustn't be like me,
Fran insisted, fight to remain still when her sister so obviously needed reassuring contact.
I won my freedom, yet my past has been cut away forever. No longer can my ears hear the green word. Do you really want this solitude? Sister.
She shook her head.
No, Mirren. Only one sister remains to you now. You must forget my existence.
Mirren gave her a hard, begging stare, then told her quietly in Vieran that she was no better than Yode and walked away, a dazed, broken-hearted expression overcoming her lovely face. Fran's eyes closed momentarily as she turned her face to the ground, but she did not remain weak for long, soon looking back up to Yode sorrowfully. Yode, in turn, sighed and shook her head deftly.
I am sorry to make you do this. If she goes against the laws of the wood,
Fran replied,
she will be no better than I am. I threw down these laws of my own volition. It is better that I do this, better I than one who must uphold these laws herself. The wood says you have earned your passage. Go straight to the mountain, and pass through on your return without delay. What the wood tolerates, it does not, you are still unwelcome here. Thank you,
Fran said with a low sigh.
We will go quickly.
Yode nodded, but then Fran hesitated, glancing briefly at her feet and then meeting eyes with her sister. She drew in a heavy breath, then spoke once more in Vieran,
the wood. I fear she hates.
Yode paused also, mildly shocked by the statement she knew she should have foreseen, and replied in the same language.
She longs for you, for the child gone from under her boughs. A pleasant lie,
Fran whispered. Yode shook her head with dismay, then spoke slowly.
She is jealous of the humans who have taken you. I am as them now, am I not?
Yode gave her a longing stare, but said nothing. Fran blinked slowly, taking in a small breath and nodding once as she spoke,
Goodbye, sister.
And she turned fluidly, walking away with the perplexed humans at her heels, leaving Yode on the other side of the gates. Dozens of Viera abandoned their hiding places and neared their priestess's side curiously, eager for a glimpse of the outsiders, even as they disappeared into the lush green distance. Many minutes of silence passed as all pondered whether or not it would be appropriate to speak. Fran strode smoothly at the head of the group, limbs significantly less languid than usual and scarlet eyes trained lifelessly ahead, and Monty watched her with intrigue for a moment or two before breaking away from Vaughn and Penelo and taking up pace at her side.
Fran, are you all right?
Though she felt quite clearly the warmth of his eyes upon her, she did not make any attempt to meet them.
I will be.
he took her hand quickly and stopped her.
"You're a good sister."
She paused for a moment, looking down at him as though she didn't believe him, but then smiled softly, and took her hand out of his and passed it through his hair.
"Thank you." "Hey, Fran."
Vaughn stepped in hesitantly.
"I was wondering. It's just what she said about you leaving 50 years ago. How old are you?"
Monty cringed, and Bosch let out a brief laugh, but managed to muffle it. Penelo held her hands over her mouth. Ash shut her eyes and slapped her forehead. And Fran, not one to dignify such an inquiry, gave Vaughn the issiest glare he had ever received, then turned without a word and continued walking.
"Nice, Vaughn,"
Bolthier groaned, following at her heels. Penelo, Bosch, and Monty started laughing, and Ash simply rolled her eyes.